Welcome to this third online flow, and this time I'm very happy to be talking to Director Loh of MoCA in Taipei. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. And I'm particularly excited to talk with you because we've been collaborating for a while now, and I think we have a lot of things in common. So I would like to talk about that. I would also like to point out how important international collaborations are for the Han Nefkens Foundation. Because our idea is, first of all, to have artists from different parts of the world being shown not only in the places where they're from, but in other places. So we've had artists from Peru being shown in Korea, artists from Korea being shown in Thailand, in Europe, of course, countries. So this idea that through art we connect with each other, I think that's one of the most important parts, or perhaps the most important part of art. The feeling that you form part of something larger than yourself, that you can connect with other people. And Director Loh Li-Chen, who's also here, she's the International Affairs Analyst and Researcher of MoCA, and is now helping us as a translator. Welcome as well. We are all connected to each other. We're all one in that sense. And art is a wonderful tool to feel that connection and to make those connections. So Taipei is important for us, and Taiwan is important for us as well, because we've had two Taiwanese artists that won the award we have together with Loop Barcelona. The first winner was Hu Yu, the last one, the recent one. And I want to read a little bit about the report of the jury, because I think it tells a lot about the depth of this work. It mentions that ingeniously amalgamated true tragedies of our world with technologies including animation and film to create compelling humanistic works. We wish to highlight his complex and sophisticated narrative structures, as well as its subversive poetic commentary on the subject matter, and we are looking forward to showing his multidimensional work in the future. Now, jury reports are always a little bit official and a little bit serious, of course. I don't want to say that I'm not serious, but I may be a little bit more direct. And what I liked so much about his work is that he does touch on very important things like mental welfare, for example. And he does so with a historic view. But at the same time, he uses a lot of animation, which animation makes things a little bit lighter without it being superficial. And I was really excited about seeing animations as such an important part of his work, because you sort of forget at a certain point that it's drawn. You sort of feel that it's real. You know, it takes you in as well. And again, these layers of history, of life in Taiwan as well, which of course for people from other parts like myself, it is really nice to have a work that gives you an insight in another culture. That's why working with so many different artists from different parts of the world is so interesting. So that was the last one, but we had another one, MoCA, who also won the Han Nefkens Barcelona Video Art Award. And I must say, this is quite unusual, because the award is for artists from all over Asia, and Asia is a really big place. So twice Taiwan has won. The jury said about MoCA that recognizing his geopolitical perspective, which utilizes the historical past to examine contemporary politics in an increasingly illiberal world, attempting to connect world histories together. Okay, well, in my language, what MoCA does is, for example, he investigates the German presence in Africa, also the French presence, and he puts the past in a contemporary structure, in a contemporary perspective. And he talks about really important things. Colonialism, of course, colonialism of Europe in Africa, which, being Eurocentric as we are, we find it quite amazing that an artist from Taiwan investigates European colonialism in Africa. And I think it's really refreshing because he gives such a different view than what we're used to. And what, of course, is so appealing about Mastiki's work is that there's always this deadpan sense of humor that makes it lighter as well. I could continue talking about those two artists because their work is profound. It is very well executed. It is a pleasure to look at. It is dynamic, and it gives a different vision on things we think we've thought about so much. That gives me the impression, and this is finally I come to my question, that gives me the impression that there may be a very dynamic art scene in Taiwan. Is that true?
Yeah. 首先要感谢，就是邀请台北当代艺术馆来参与这个视讯的国际会议。其实，在台湾的现况我们在这个近代的当代艺术的发展里面，录像艺术一直是很重要的一块，尤其是我们在产官学方面的这个共同合作。以我自己本身的经验来讲，2001年开始，我的博士论文也开始在研究台湾的新媒体艺术。那里面就会发现很多的这个，比如说工具的方便性，创作这个录像艺术工具的方便性，还有美学训练的相近，还有这个很多老师会从国外回来，比如说现在北美馆馆长王俊杰以及袁广明老师，他们在教学上的这些努力。那再来就是民间的这个资料库，比如说我们的台湾视觉艺术协会 AVAT 的资料库，以及凤甲美术馆他们的双年展，还有国美馆的这个资料库，其实都培养了很多在这个部分的这个艺术家的作品，然后能够提供这个环境非常好的一个养分。所以很多艺术家在投身于这个录像艺术，从过去的单频道一直到录像装置，比如说王鼎业的录像装置，还有录像剧场。我们现在有很多录像艺术家会把这个作品延伸到剧场的形式，像苏慧宇，还有我们熟知的陶雅伦老师也在当代馆展览过他的 VR 的作品，他其实有很多是录像提供很多这个重要的作品的内容。
So first of all, our director would really like to thank you for the opportunity and thanks for your kindness inviting us. It was our honor to participate in this event. And
it's my honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our director mentioned that video art is actually a very important part for our contemporary art in Taiwan. That is true. There is a huge contribution because of the industry connected with the contribution from academic, but also from the government as well. And for example, there are a lot of new media arts that was developed or it was constructed in this certain field. Given that there are a lot of there are some certain points that makes video art become prominent in Taiwan. So first of all, it is because the convenience of the media. Basically, it's very bendable and very flexible. And second of all, a lot of very important figures in art industry now in Taiwan, they were studying from. They used to be very important figures to study in new media art. For example, the Taipei Museum, Taipei Fine Art Museum, the director
of Taipei Fine Art Museum,
Wang Junjie. So he was also part of the studies in new media arts, and also our director as well. She used to be focusing on this as her academic focus. And the other part is that we also have a huge database for not only from the government, but also from maybe like local institutions. For example, we have the Association of Visual Arts in Taiwan, this organization, they have a huge database of video art as well, but also Hongga Museum and National Taiwan Museum of Fine Arts. They have a lot of studies and research on this field. For the last part, Taiwan has actually developed a lot of different kinds of video arts. For example, we have focusing on installation video.
Video installation
that our director just mentioned, Wang Dingye. Or the other parts is certain like theater combining video art. For example, the artists like Su Hui. And the final that a lot of people mentioned, and it was quite well known in Taiwan, combining VR with video arts. For example, the artist of Tao Yalun.
Yeah. So that really means that for the Han Nefkens Foundation, there's a lot of work to be done in Taiwan to discover all these different artists that are there. What you mentioned is, this first of all, when I was in Taiwan a couple of years ago, I would see, this is for all of Asia, I would see young people constantly being in with their phone filming everything. So it's obviously not the same video art and filming with your telephone, but it is a first step of thinking in a very visual way. And I think you're very right to point out that the technological advances in Taiwan, and the same goes for Korea and Japan as well, help young people to become more sophisticated in the technological use of video. But at the same time, you can have the technological sophistication, but you also need to have something to say in order to make art. And this is what struck me so much, the two artists that we have chosen, that technologically they are sophisticated, they know how to use the medium, they are even adventurous in that they use certain ways of editing, in use of animation, of course, in the use of historic documents, but always as a mean to tell a story, because they really have something to say. So I think that says a lot about culture in Taiwan, but it says a lot about the education as well, that people know what's going on in the rest of the world. He knows about Germans and French in Africa, and that there's being talked about mental illness, healthcare. So it shows so many different aspects of society. And that takes me to the question, is there any support, official support for video artists in Taiwan?
对于当代馆来讲，或台湾来讲，其实我们有很多实验性的这种计划哈。如果以当代馆来讲，我们有 MoCA Video 跟 MoCA Studio， 他们都鼓励非常实验性的作品，还有艺术家的发展。那同时，其实刚才 Hans 有提到的，我想要稍微再回应一下，就是台湾其实是一个很特殊的状况。我们从过去的殖民历史，一直到我们有一段时间是非常仰赖，就是对于西方的美学经验，但是一直到台湾本土主体性的这意识的抬头，越来越多艺术家应用的工具跟回应的艺术哲学的问题，都来自于这块土地，还有他自己本身的这个想法的回馈。所以我觉得那一段历程一直走到现在，可以看到很多新的台湾年轻艺术家在录像艺术这一块的投入，已经是很成熟的，能够拥有自己的语言。那我想这也就是来自于就是我们过去很多实验性的这种机会，不管是奖项，或者是像我刚才提到 MoCA 本身有的 MoCA Video 跟 Studio 的这个机会的提供，然后让艺术家可以有实验跟展现的平台。
So our director just mentioned that as for the question that you just mentioned, for support system. And for example, in MoCA, we have the program of MoCA Video and also MoCA Studio. And for MoCA Studio, it's actually both of the program encourage people to do experimental projects. So we encourage, especially young artists, to devote experimental artwork and projects into this program, and we will be showing it. So this is the kind of how we can play as a support system in the role of an institution. And she would also like to refer back to what Han just mentioned about the context of what Taiwanese artists has created, that because since Taiwan, we do have a history of colonization until now, there is a very mixed identity in Taiwan for contemporary society. And a lot of our artists now, especially for video art, they do have, as what Han just mentioned, they do have a specific language and very developed language, perhaps in this media, but also because of this context, in this historic context or this modern context we are in, the artists, they kind of explore through identity and individuality with this media a lot. And because back to what we just mentioned, we provide and we encourage experimental work. So we have certain programs like we just mentioned from MoCA, but also Taiwan has a lot of awards specifically for video art. And that kind of becomes like a circling system that can support a lot of video arts in Taiwan.
I like that. I think it's very good that artists get the opportunity to be experimental, because very often with commissions, it says very much, you have to do this, it has to be ready, it has to be a little bit like this or that. And for artists to develop, young artists, but even older ones, time is so important. Just having the time to concentrate on what you're doing. And there's always a very fine line between having a commission and a deadline, having the opportunity to experiment. And I'm saying this because this is what I'm experiencing as a writer. The pandemic, of course, is a terrible situation, but it has helped me in the sense that it has given me the luxury of time to really focus on my writing. And I now have a blog. We talked about that. I put the things I write on the blog, and it comes out every Monday, so it's once a week. And that gives me a deadline. It gives me a structure to write, but it also gives me enough time to experiment, just as the young artist, to think about if what I'm writing is really the best way, if I don't fall back on things I've done before. So I created for myself a kind of structure to also be experimental. I'm telling you this not because I like to talk about myself. I do actually, but because I want to tell you that I can relate to these artists, and I think it is also very important to be surrounded by people who support you, right? As I'm sure MoCA is doing with these artists, to feel that you're not working completely on your own. People who look at the work and people who might encourage you to continue or to do things differently. So I'm very happy about that, and I would really like to know more about this, particularly this experimental part of video work. My next question is, how important are international connections for MoCA?
International connection. 就是你可以理解彼此。
其实在这个 MoCA 跟国际的合作上，我们一直都持续在进行。不过，因为从去年开始，疫情就变得比较严峻，然后有很多国际的合作，我们采取的方法第一个就是远端布展，比如说我们接下来可能会跟威尼斯双年展的这个 GAD 的地区有一个合作。那这个我们会选择艺术家都是可以远端布展的，有这个能力的艺术家，或者呢，我们会是双边 的作品交换。那这时候 Video Art 就是有一个绝对的优势，因为它就可以用资料的传输，所以让比如说台湾我们现在可能未来跟瑞士也会有个合作，然后我们也可以在 MoCA Video Showing 瑞士端的艺术家的作品，然后我们的作品也有可能传送到远端的国家去，所以这时候 Video Art 其实就变成一个更能够让这个互相合作可以实践的一种媒材。那还有比如说我们跟釜山现代美术馆，它是MoCA Boson， 他们的合作就会是我们在当代馆的某一个展览展间，我们架设了一个视讯的一个 webcam， 然后让我们的展览可以在釜山的他们的展间会有一个等于可以及时看到在台北这里展览的现场。那我们会采取几种这样的方式作为国际就是有关艺术计划交换的一个方法。这个部分我先这样回答。
Our directors mentioned that for international connection, it has been, we have been affected by the pandemic as well, but given by the circumstances, we also have some adaptation towards it. For first of all, we have some international collaboration that should be physical, that we assist by remotely installation. So people will be remotely helping us the installation, and we will be selecting artworks that were easier or it's easier to transmit or to transport. So for example, video art has become rather important at this time because for video art, it's very easy for installation. Yeah. And for the second way that we do a certain kind of exchange. So these kind of exchange program, we have also considered to do video arts exchange as well, since this will be an easier way to do the installation and do the planning. We have been talking to certain Switzerland artists, and we might be having a new project considering Swiss video art. And the other way that it's a collaboration that will be upcoming soon. It's our project with MoCA Busan in Korea. So this project, they have a physical exhibition at Busan, but they have a webcam. So we were planning to have a webcam at showing our institution's artwork, and it will be simultaneously live streaming at the space. So they will have a monitor in their museum. So there are these kind of different international projects that we have been working on and have been collaborating under the pandemic system.
Yeah.
Excuse me, would you like to?
Sorry. 有关于这个我们馆的部分哈，就是还有几个我们比较活络的方式，一个就是因为有一些远端的观众没有办法来到当代馆，包含国内跟国外，所以我们建了线上展厅。这是很多美术馆都会做的一个系统，就是用 MetaPort 它做一个 VR 线上展厅的呈现。那另外我们也会运用我们现在有 MoCA Podcast， 然后这 Podcast 其实这几件事都是有几个目的，第一个就是服务不能到场的观众，然后第二个就是让他们对于 MoCA 的这个品牌的记忆度还能够维持住。我们希望在未来疫情趋缓，大家能够更多的国际或国内交流的时候，都还能够来到台北当代艺术馆。
Director Luo just mentioned that we also have several other projects that we can maintain it through online under pandemic system. So for the first one is the VR online exhibition room. We use it via Metaport, so people from different countries or people who cannot come to Taiwan or Taipei, they can access the exhibition room through this certain system. And the second one is MoCA Podcast, as Han should be very familiar with it.
Yeah.
And so this one we have a podcast that we invite different artists and different people in art industry or others to talk to. Yeah, and we also have a lot of special editions. And so through these certain projects that we can enhance the people to be still connected through the time that they couldn't be visiting, but also we can sort of improve it through the system that when people who cannot come, but also they can have a strong connection. Hopefully, after the pandemic, people can be visiting.
Yeah. So in other words, you've been able to adapt pretty well. I must say that our foundation started to focus on video art several years ago because that is really my passion. And I so learned with the years that in order to do something well, you have to focus, you have to concentrate, which really means saying no to so many other things that come your way. So that's why I decided to focus on video art, because perhaps as a writer again, I really appreciate the fact that video art can have a narrative. You have the time to develop a story in video art, which art forms is much more complicated. I like the aesthetic aspect of it, but I thought also it is very practical, because when we organize exhibitions all over the world, the transport costs and the insurance costs of transporting big works of art, imagine installations and sculptures and photography, or I even was involved in cutting edge fashion. The costs of transportation were enormous. But, well, with that amount that we spend on transportation, we can produce new work with video. So that was one of the other reasons, just a very practical reason, that video is really such a good medium to show worldwide. So during the pandemic, that has been very helpful to us as well. So now, of course, the big question: how do we look at the future? I think one of the things we've really learned this year is that you cannot say very much about the future, because nobody would have told us that we'd be in the situation we're now 2 years ago. So I think we all learned that the future, forecasts about the future are just thoughts, and what happens is something we have to wait for. Still, I think there are certain lessons that we've been learning now. One of the lessons I've learned is really the pleasure of having the Zoom talks with you, that I think without the pandemic we wouldn't have had. And this is something that we will definitely continue to do. And I think we will also continue to have our jury meetings through Zoom, because getting people from all over the world together at one place, it's very nice, of course, to be able to exchange ideas, but it takes a lot of time for everybody. People traveling from Asia to Europe or the other way around, you have the jet lag, and it takes several days at least to do that. And of course, it's very expensive. So I think we will continue with jury meetings online as well. It's just practical, it takes up less time, and it's cheaper. But of course, there's also still the necessity to look at people personally. Because it is really nice to see the two of you now, but it would be even nicer to see the two of you in real life, because you always miss a certain dimension. And I'm sure this is going to happen. But I would like to know, how do you see let's say the coming time? I don't even want to mention the future, but the coming time, as far as MoCA is concerned, and as far as video art in Taiwan is concerned.
就是我觉得未来我们对于就是因为它是很不可预期或不可，就是我们做再多的规划，它都有可能改变。所以其实我也一直在思考说，有一些东西它可能会变成一种永恒的状态，比如说我们的线上展厅，它其实就会一直持续的做，即便未来这个疫情趋缓，我还是觉得它可以值得做。比如说它就会变成是一种很好的记录展厅，但有一些就是现场性是不可取代的。那我们可能就要再去思考说美术馆的这个功能，比如说美术馆它其实有教育、典藏、展示还有研究的这些功能，哪一些功能是会被提到？展示这件事 是要用其他方式去替代，但是其他的功能是不是应该要被再往前提，比如说研究。那我们在这个比较虚拟的这个部分的服务，它是不是可以变成更多元的方法？为什么会这样讲呢？我还是会觉得说，如果所有东西都转线上，其实会变成美术馆，还有这个表演厅，其实他们都没有存在的必要。但我们跟观众的距离会是观众的关系会是如何的产生变化？我觉得这才是下一阶段美术馆面临更大的考验，就是观众会在哪里，还有观众不必到现场的时候，我们提供什么样的服务？那这也是我们现在其实也就积极在寻求更多元的服务方式的一个想法。
Director Luo said that in this time of pandemics, it's actually very unpredictable what would happen in the future. But she expressed that she thought a lot of adaptations we had made, it will actually be permanent in the future. For example, now we will have this Metaports on a VR online exhibition. It is actually serve as a really good archival or for people that who cannot come.
Yeah.
It was a very good progress to make it. But also she had a lot of thoughts on how do we proceed or how do we progress in the things that you cannot be replaced by online. For example, just as we said, what are the things that an audience would need, or where is the audience, or what if the audience is not at present, what can we provide?
Yes, I think so too. I think we've learned a lot. There's things we keep, but I think we're also very much looking forward to the day that we can meet each other personally, right? So, and I'm already looking forward to visiting in Taiwan, particularly after everything you told me now about the dynamic video art scene there and the experimental artists, and I would really like to visit them. So I think we have a date. I mean, a date in the sense that I will come, but we don't know when yet.
Okay.
I would like to thank you very much for talking to us and for sharing your experiences. And once more, I'd like to say how much I appreciate the collaboration. And I'm even more excited about it now after this talk. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.